Well, this is it. 5 o'clock, 14th of August, 1945, 75 years ago, right now. Over there you can see the landing strip, and I'd love to have pre-arranged it, but here comes an aircraft landing on the docks. So in memory, that's actually a Stirling bomber just touching down. That's the same runway, the same landscape around, Lake District in the distance, taxiing up the main runway, Crosby-on-Eden airfield. The last of the planes carrying the children arrived here after 8 o'clock in the evening. They were processed in a hangar at the far end of the runway. You heard Ike's description of the white bread, the jam, the tea. They were taken by buses in that direction to Windermere, to Carlisle Estate, where they were helped to settle in by members of the Central British Fund, now World Youth Relief. Key players, Leda Montefiore, Oscar Friedman. We also know about a well-known person played by Romola Garai in the Windermere Children film, Marie Paneth. And people often ask me, what do we do now? People are often saying, is that not the end? Have you finished now? You've got an exhibition, what do you do? I spoke earlier about the importance of Holocaust education. We're coming to the end as the survivors leave us. We're coming to the end of one kind of episode. We're about to enter a new kind of episode. We're working with their children, the second generation, with the third generation. The toxic legacy of the Holocaust doesn't depart when that first generation leaves us. I'm part now, as well as doing the exhibition in Windermere, and our huge archives. We're going through them now, and they are vast. We're looking at the stories of 3 children. They were part of this over 700 that came here eventually in Britain over the next 2 years, all helped by World Youth Relief, Central British Fund to build new lives. Well, the person at the front line of that, and Marie Paneth, was actually an art therapist. And quite remarkably for us, she left a journal, and the journal was called, in the folder, the Windermere Reception Camp. It was found in the US very recently, and there's a book in the journal called Rock the Cradle. And that book describes her life preparing for the children to arrive at the Windermere Reception Camp at Carlisle. She talks about how amenable and how welcoming. There were still 1,000 local people living at Carlisle when the children arrived. 1,000 ordinary British working class people. And their welcome was such that when one of the Jewish children asked Marie, having arrived at Carlisle Estate, who are these other people? Marie said, these are ordinary British working class people being friendly to you. And the Jewish child who'd asked the question replied and said, this is a good country, these are good people. Her insights for us was like striking gold. She describes life on Carlisle Estate at the Windermere Reception Camp, how the psychiatrists and the nurses and the local people provided the bikes, provided tomato soup, provided, all pitched in. They just defeated a common enemy. The Nazis who had occupied Europe and had treated everybody abysmally, but the Jewish people had been singled out. And people at Carlisle Estate recognise that. And that's what we have to cling on to today. By working together, we can defeat these appalling forces that seem to periodically rise up. We have to challenge them with goodness. And Marie talks about this in her book. She talks about Windermere, then she follows a group of these children to their hostels, to their new lives, and how they began to rebuild lives afterwards. And then after a while, she carries on helping these children. We're going to be publishing that book, second generation publishing. I've been invited by Henry Hockland. Henry's family, Hagen Hocker, was a very famous bookshop in Manchester. Henry invites me to join forces with him so we can publish Marie. We can work with people like Tom Palmer. Tom's book is going to be on Holocaust Memorial Day. It's going to be talked about in front of 10,000 school children after the war. The children's stories, the lessons that we can learn from that time. And for myself, this funny little airport in the back of Beyond, you know, this is an iconic location for me personally, as it is for Ike and Sam and Maya and Ben and Jack and Koppel and Minia and Salah and Jan, you know, the list goes on. I've met many of them really personally. This was the start of something new. This was the stuff of dreams to them. Just a few months earlier, you've seen the images of the Buchenwald train, as we call it. I didn't show you the worst of that. That's what these children have been on. They'd been in Auschwitz. I have so many stories from these guys of their experiences. So maybe I've been educated by them about what the Holocaust was about and what it needed to be resilient and to survive. And I want to leave my legacy. I want the Lake District Holocaust Project to be used to teach other children to really get an insight into what it was about. We have the archives, we've talked to many of the children, the boys and the girls, and we've even talked to the cooks and the chefs and the cleaners and the maintenance men, all those who lived at Carlisle Estate at the time and afterwards. And there's a lesson there about all people who believe in goodness just sticking together. My mentor through all this, to a great extent, has been Ben Helfgott, but I could equally say it was Ike Alterman. I could say it was Maya Hirsch, a man who survived 18 months in Birkenau, in a location where he could see every step of the process of that damned killing machine. And Maya witnessed it all. He could see it all going on around him. And he came at the end of it, and he was the most gentle man. He said, we just got to educate people about this. He talked to many people about it. He lived in a Manchester community that I became very, very close to. That Manchester community led into the London community, led into the New York community, the Florida community, the Boston community, the Israeli community, all the relatives, the 45A Society, all of them linked by 45 Aid, linked by World Jewish Relief, and a little bit linked by the Lake District Holocaust Project in Windermere. So there we are, that's it. That's the airstrip. From here, they went to those hills in the far distance, the Lake District. And if we think Wordsworth and Ruskin and the Romantics, if we think they constructed our paradise for our benefit, I tell you what, there's a group of 300 children absolutely bought into and were just so appreciative of that paradise. Those were the youngsters that came here 75 years ago. Right now, they're being taken off their planes, and you know what they're looking forward to, what they cannot believe? Think about this: white bread, jam, and a cup of tea with milk. To people, that could be part of paradise. So thank you for joining us today. It's been informal. We've had technical issues, but I think we've overcome them. But I can tell you this, as our dear friend Miroslav Bauka said at a preview recently, he said, the Lake District Holocaust Project is a small organisation with a big heart. And I speak for myself, I speak for my colleague Rose Army with me. I speak for Alex and Chris and Tom and Carla and Liz and Tom Gardner and all the people who've worked with us through the years. We've been to Auschwitz, we've been to Helmdov, we've been to Treblinka, we've been to Shiraz, we've been to Shestagova, we've been to Warsaw, we've been to places which to me 15 years ago would have meant nothing. They weren't even places on a map. Big cities, Warsaw, Lodz, great. Shestagova, Shiraz, Osherov, what are these places? These are places where these children came from and where the Jewish communities are no longer there. I'm passionate about it. I can get emotional about it, but I try and keep it under control. What went on there was so wrong, so bad, and we owe it to our children and to our grandchildren to do all that we can to fight this damn stuff coming back again. I do it for my friends. People know them as Holocaust survivors, and they are, but my friends are Ben, Maya, Jack, Arik, Harry Ulmer, Harry Spyro, Jan Goldberg, Moshe Norman, the people you know. Survivors is a generic term. It covers a time of history, but you know, these are people, and these were some of the 300 that came here, but these 300 were the child Holocaust survivors, but they were individuals. The history that they'd lived through, the appalling history, bound them together. But each of them had 300 individual stories. And the main one, the lesson that I've learned from all of them, is resilience. Is even in the face of a horrendous onslaught, when you are of the genocide, when they're after you, they're after your families, everything, and they've taken most of it from you. You just dig deep in resilience and you don't let them win. And as Ben said to me, we can't afford hatred, but we have to fight for justice. And I think he's absolutely right, and education. So thank you for joining us today. We've commemorated, for me, a very, very special day. I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved. I'd like to thank Carlisle Lake District Airport for allowing us access to this. COVID-19, not great for anybody, but we've had tremendous access and assistance from them, and from everybody who's been involved. Tom behind the camera, Nicola behind another camera, Henry's around somewhere. I've come out. This is what it was like 75 years ago. They arrived in this kind of sunshine. And somebody is smiling down on us today, because this is a relative rarity in the Lake District on a particular day, at a particular time, to have the sun coming out. But I think the sun came out on those children when they arrived for a reason. So to all the families out there, all of the second generation, the third generation, the 45A Society, World Jewish Relief, who the British government accepted these children, but they helped them rebuild. And when you see Marie's book, Marie Pennant, From the Cradle, you'll see where we're going next. With that, I'd like to thank you all for being with us today, and I look forward to sharing future episodes of our adventures in the future.